Hello, Dumelang, and welcome to yet another interesting and thought-provoking episode of Motlhophi BUA Voter Speak. And this is an election podcast that is brought to you by Bokongo, Duma FM, as well as the Embassy of the United States of America in Gaborone. My name is Dumisa Mote, the host of the podcast, and today we have a very, very interesting topic that we need to talk about. It's a crucial topic that we have been, in passing, just talking about the surface level of issues of education. And today, I hope that we can delve into the deeper, below sea level conversations. Tse e leng gore di tla re bontsha sentle gore seemo sa rona sa thuto ke se se ntseng yang mo lehatsheng la Botswana. Mme ebile re lebile gore re mo ngwageng wa ditlhopho re tle re bone gore ke eng se e leng gore ba se bua e le gongwe bontlhopheng kana diphati tsa sepolotiki malebang le maitlamo a bone a gore ba go dira jang ga e le gore ba tsaya puso malebang le yone kganye ya moruthuta ya education. Tsatsi la gompieno, we're going to see how we can revitalize our education system. Me go nthusa o ka dira jalo ke na le baeng ba e leng gore ba na le nna mo ntlokgaso mo ke na le mme Lesedi Ntshambiwa we e leng gore ke Motlhophi ke a go dumedisa mma.
Thank you so much, Remotei. Le nna ke a go dumedisa ke dumedisa Batswana kwa lapeng.
All right. Ebe ke nna gape le re ke itseng gore ba le bantsi ba tla mo itse Professor Richard Tabulawa we e leng gore ke motho o nnang a kwala go tseneletse thata mo mererong ya tsa thuto mme ebile he is known for his work on pedagogy and just addressing the situation that we currently face in terms of our education in Botswana. Ke a go dumedisa Prof. Ke a go amogela.
No, thank you so much, Mutei. I also greet your listeners out there.
Right. And I would like for you to participate, of course. Our conversation is going to be live on Duma FM and across various social media platforms. So do take this opportunity. Gore ha ile gore o na le sengwe se e leng gore o ka eletsa gore o se latlhele ha ntse re bua jana e bo ka dira jalo mo mogaleng wa 76281885. A re tle re simolole puisong ya rona me Ntshambiwa. Ke botse wena hela o le Motlhophi o le Motswana ka nna, a lay person. How might you describe the current education system? Go tswa ko moding hela o tla le yone hela jana o tsena mo mehameng ye mengwe bo TVET jana tiro tsa diatla e be re lebella bo tertiary ha re leng teng mo nakong ya gompieno.
Ke ya ka se tsubile ke motsadi ke Motswana mo Botswana, and looking into the education system as it is mo Botswana re tebagantse le tsa basic education. Let me take this time and just to say I think Botswana, when it comes to structure and when it comes to access, we are much better as compared to other contexts or as compared to other countries as it is. And I think that's one thing that we are really doing well with. La ha go terena le di crowd mo di classroom tsa rona bana ba bantsi. Trust you me, go botoka. And there's a lot that we can actually do. Beyond just saying structure-wise, we have the structures. We have those who are going classes outside under trees. But I want to believe somehow in structures we have done quite a lot. But now when we look into the actual education systems inside the classroom, there's a lot that we can do. And like you said, it's high time re itabisise re le goromente re le botsadi re le Batswana go bona gore re ka tlokahatsa yang go go pele. And then for me, I want to speak especially to the curriculum as it is, from both basic primary and junior secondary schools. Just to say we have a very loaded, packed curriculum. E leng gore e hela dira gore bo teacher jaanong be ba siana leng le curriculum gore ke meet the requirements of the curriculum, and we have so many learners then who are left behind. So I think if we can look into our curriculum aspect and have a more flexible, modernized, targeted curriculum that speaks to a learner, we will go far. And saying this, I'm saying this because often at times the load goes with the 70% or 60% of those learners who are getting ba ile gore ba tshwara be go ra gore re tlogela 40% o sa le seng ko morago ga re sa tlhore boela go go ene kgang e le yone ya curriculum e leng gore e packed. And beyond the packed curriculum, I think we should also look into the content in which our curriculum is, as packed as it is. Is it speaking to a learner who's going to be ready to the for the market in 10 years' time? Curriculum arna, is it updated enough to be speaking to the world as it is, the modernized world as it is? Is it flexible enough? Often at times, ke feel gore le nna ke le motsadi, go tla bo ngwana a mpotsa dipotso tsa bo kapa, things that I don't even know as a parent. And often at times we are saying, parents, let us be involved in the education system or the education part as parents. And then the other thing that I want to speak to, and when it comes to education ya rona, I think ke gona gore bo teacher, we have a lot of teachers who have graduated, but they're still unemployed. And we have gaps inside the schools. It still beats me to say we have unemployment rate yet we have learners who don't have teachers. So I think ministry to say every child deserves an education and deserves a teacher in class. And then lastly, I think after COVID, double shifting. I don't know if it happens across all the country, but I want to believe it's something that we need to look into, because bana for our small school, or the majority of the time they're home. Majority of the time, tiro ya sekolo e hiwa batsadi. Not saying they should not be part of the education, but I would want us to revisit the time in which we have Moskolon to say 4 hours is not enough for our learners to capture. That's why when I look at compressed curriculum and leaving behind other learners. So my call to action to that is like, let's look into our curriculum. Let's have a targeted and more inclusive curriculum that will benefit all. And then when we move to tertiaries, like you said, I think the education spectrum as it is, we don't have actually more practical institutions. University. Of course, brigades, technical vacation, practicing. So for me, I want to believe if di tertiary ne di khona go dira yaka di vocational training, ne di khona go dira yaka bo IHS, because learning theory and then actually not doing practice, it does not prepare the learners, or does not prepare these individuals to be ready for the market. Ke sono so bana ka mosobe gote nna ga re itse gore ne ba ithutang ko university ka gore ba tile hela ka bane bantsi, because we are doing the theory part. This one eta nna bo professor go ngota ta ena nkolla gore ke eng go ntse jalo, but I want to believe we can do quite a lot when it comes to the education system in Botswana.
Yes. Yeah. Prof, Wabuame Nsambiwa, I must think those were not rhetorical questions. Those were actual questions that need to be answered. As a professor and former dean of the Faculty of Education at the University of Botswana, and your research, which I believe spans across issues of pedagogy and education policy. How do you diagnose the current situation, the education landscape? How does it look from your point of view?
No, thank you, Motlhophi. I would want to agree with Meman Sambiwa that we really have a very serious problem and with the education system. And that problem spans a number of layers. One of them she has mentioned is the curriculum. And if you ask me, I would say that is the main problem that we have in our education system today. We are often told that our education system standards have declined, and there's just general consensus. But how and why they've declined, that is an issue that is really addressed. So I think we will be in a position, this afternoon to unpack that and demonstrate clearly how the curriculum is really the biggest problem. Yes, there are issues of material shortages, this and that, but those are not as important as the curriculum, because the curriculum affects the students, the curriculum, interestingly, and she has made mention of that, affects the teacher and teacher morale. It's not just a question of welfare of teachers, but the curriculum itself affects their well-being as well. And I will be in a position to demonstrate that.
Yes.
That is the situation. Now, that is at the basic education level. Now, when it comes to the tertiary education level, my view is that the model of curriculum development that we're adopting there, the same model that we've adopted at basic education level, which is whether you call it objectives or outcome-based education model, is probably the worst education model that we've ever had. And again, I will be in a position to demonstrate why I'm saying that. And we see now tertiary education institutions remodeling their curriculum to reflect that philosophy, outcome-based education. And I'm saying, it is going to give us very, very serious problems. Yes, we have access in this country to education. It's not a big deal. The biggest problem that we have is the quality of the education that we are providing. And again, I'm going to be challenging this idea that tertiary education, for example, is failing the economy, because I'm not sure whether that assertion is based on concrete evidence. I have a different take on that, and I hope we'll be able to unpack that as we proceed.
Right. And I'm going to tap into those discussions that you've probably had within your work, your academic work. But ke batla o e boledisanyana pele gore re nne le sengwe se leng gore re ka simolla re gamela mala mo go sone. I want to look at this issue of the syllabus that you've mentioned so emphatically and with so much passion, it seems.
Yeah.
Gore ke karolo he ya syllabus e leng gore ena le mathata ka gore syllabus ya la ka boyone syllabus ke ha ke tsele gore ke selo se leng gore se na le bothata. It's not inherently flawed. So the question, ultimately, is in terms of our education system, is the education system itself and the models that we have since employed or adopted, are they the ones that are flawed? Kana ke kganya specific policies that have failed.
Well, the models we have adopted are based on the policies. And let me take this further. Before 2000, year 2000, to be specific, more specific, 1999, when we introduced the so-called objectives-based curriculum in the schools, Mansambia will know about that. We had a different kind of syllabus altogether. Now, that syllabus just simply listed in the syllabus, just listed topics that teachers were going to cover. And teachers were meant to address or cover those topics really in detail, because they had no idea how questions were going to, how the questions that were going to be set in the exams were going to look like in general. But then we changed the objectives-based curriculum. Why did we change to that? It was as a result of the revised national policy on education, whose main motive or central theme was to relate education to the world of work. Then the question was, how do you do that? The objectives-based curriculum was born. That you come up with objectives. Those objectives don't just represent knowledge. They also represent the skills and dispositions that are related to the world of work. Now, what will then happen? How did we then approach the syllabus construction, which I believe is really the main issue? We then said, well, look, we take a topic and break down that topic into specific objectives. And she knows what I'm talking about. Probably all of us here know what I'm talking about. Break down into specific topics. Into specific objectives. And then we cover those objectives individually. And the final emphasis was covering only those objectives and nothing else, because nothing else that was not part of the objectives was not relevant. Now, you see, the problem of selecting, you take a topic, you select certain objectives. The process of selecting involves necessarily exclusion. If you are selecting, you are excluding something. Now, which means that when you selected those objectives, there are certain aspects of knowledge and skills for that topic that are left out, that are not going to be covered in the syllabus. And therefore, what teachers then do, because they were told, and they are still told, that you only cover that which is in the syllabus, they will just teach to the objective. You can see what is happening here. You get students receiving what you call partial knowledge, because those aspects of content or that topic that are not part of the objectives are not covered. So a student leaves a topic without a comprehensive understanding of that topic. We call that phenomenon the knowledge gap. Mm-hmm. So a student may get an A+ in a subject, but it may be that because they've mastered those objectives, but it doesn't mean that they have a comprehensive mastery of the topic, because they've not covered the entirety of the topic. So that knowledge gap becomes very clear when you get to tertiary education, where I am. An A-star student in physics or chemistry, when they get there, we get surprised. What is happening here? This is a very brilliant student. Because the approach, now we expect them to have a comprehensive understanding of that topic. And you find that their knowledge is just basically anecdotal. Mm-hmm. It's not complete.
Mensambiwa khanye bua nke re tabula. A ke khanye leng gore ya tshela, where there's seemingly a contradiction between a student's transcript and the application of the knowledge in the real world. Gore wena o le motsadi se leng gore o bona se diragala keng ga o nnisa hatse ngwana gongwe o motsolotsa se leng gore wa se motsolo a o itlhela ile gore se leng gore o se kwadile le se leng gore wa se dira a dia tsamaelana.
It's very true what Professor is saying. A study was done here in Botswana for standard 3s to 5 when it comes to basic numeracy and literacy. And it was found out that over 70% of our learners at primary, they can't read to comprehend, or they can't read for meaning. And it's exactly what he's saying. It's more like now our education system, curriculum, we are drilling learners for an exam than impacting knowledge and skill. So that ha go tsena go tertiary nga ya go tsena go senior abana le kitso eo e leng gore wa e tlhaloganya. Ga o ka lebella bontsi jana go bile ga go bo junior school go bo senior school, ma form 3 bontsi jana go le ma standard 7 le ma form 5 o tlhelele gore ba hiwa nako e ntsi preparing them for an exam. Why don't we start ha ba ira form 1? Why don't we start ha ba ira form 4 to prepare them for their final examination? To equip them to write an exam than to impact a skill that will carry them university tertiary
There's a positive reinforcement ya se o se buang ke ra gore ga moithuti a tsa an A-star a tsa an A+ on A go na le ka re tshwarang ka teng moithuti o re mo opela diatla go mo go tswa kgakala mo e leng gore jaanong we associate that with education and what it means to be progressing within the education system. So how do we unlearn that? How do we now engender an idea of intrinsic learning so that learning, knowledge acquisition is intrinsically engendered in a student? A low mark, hela ka gorogela ko goreng o na le a certain mastery of the subject matter. Ke gone mo e leng gore go tla mo khotsogatsa go na le gore e nne gore o tsere A kana go kwadilwe A+ kana.
I think it even goes beyond that, and what you're saying is entirely true. how lebella the reason why ebile re bua ka yone mismatch the job market gore baithuti ba rona ba tswang who are graduating from universities are not ready to be workers. It comes from there to say there's more of theory than practice in our curriculum. It will always go back to the curriculum, of course, to say maybe if we were having a little bit of balance between the theory and the practice, it will empower them more to than just be reading and studying for exam. But when you teach somebody to do something, it's hard for them to forget it. It's more like giving a poor man a fish. They will eat for a day, but teach them how to fish. They can fish for themselves for the rest of their lives. So I want to call to more practical curriculum than more theory-based curriculum so that we can equip our learners. In never di learner tse leng gore ga ba balehela be ba bua hela yaka o buile. We learn differently. Some learners learn by touching, some learners learn by reading, others learn by just doing this and that. So if we can incorporate all these learning skills together, we are targeting every learner at their point of need.
Prof, there's a diversity within the student body. Ka ha batho ba amogelang ka teng thuto, the visual learners, those who learn vicariously. Go na le ba e leng gore ba batla go utlwa gongwe motho a teng a eletsa gore o no ntse o ba tshamekela sengwe. Does our system allow for us to cater to the diverse needs of the students in such a way that those students that are not well, in terms of the consumption of learning, they learn in different ways? Are they able to get the satisfaction of being able to be taught in a way that they're able to best learn?
No, look, we have a standardized and centralized education system, and also a standardized and centralized curriculum, which basically means that diversity is not celebrated in our education system. Now, we can go back into history to see why we ended up with that kind of curriculum. And it goes back to the issue of nation building. That there was this vision that if you are going to build a unified nation, you need a single or a homogeneous identity, national identity. And you could use the education system to build that identity. And if you were to build that identity, which is homogeneous, then you needed an education system that was standardized. So from the onset, we never celebrated diversity in our education system. If I take this a step further, you will realize that in our curriculum, when we select what is going to be taught in a subject, let's take social studies or whatever, you'll realize that the content that goes in there comes from the mainstream parts of society. And then you ask yourself, where are the voices in the curriculum of the marginalized? For example, if I take the Sand people, for example, their experiences, where are they in the curriculum? They are nowhere to be found. But remember, for a student to have interest in education, they must be in a position to see that it relates to their lived experiences out there. They can relate to the curriculum. Now, when you get there, you are taught in class about things that are very alien to you. You have no idea what people are talking about. You won't have interest in the curriculum. The chances that you develop, you just miss classes because there's nothing that connects you with the education system. And that emanates from this idea that we need one centralized, standardized curriculum. And I think this also boiled down now to the way we configured our offerings, where we would say we only have one student. Why should we be worried about visual students, that and that? But I think that is changing now. We see policies coming, like issues of VAPA in the schools, right? They are now teaching all students, all those, offering students all those, and so forth. So there is some diversity that is taking place. But at a national level, we are supposed to be a homogeneous society. What you cover in Nanugang Junior Secondary School, a student in Gambao in the Northwest should cover, and cover in the same manner. In other words, we also have this standardized pedagogy. But going to the question that you posed to Mansambiwa Hore, how can we ensure that we move away from this drilling kind of teaching to a situation where we actually emphasize skills development and so forth? Now, this teaching, this drilling that we know is the in thing in our schools is not something that we can do away with so easily, because it has a whole support system, right? And it's not only the examinations, it's also the public's perception of what is good education, right? Such that you will see this when the exams results come out. A league table is drawn, which says this school is number one, this school is the last one. And it's not so much what percentage pass the school has scored, but where is this school in the league table? If you are number one and you are at 25, that is celebrated. 25%, that is celebrated. That is failure. That is your failed. The school has failed, but that is still celebrated. So what is this doing to the schools, to the teachers, to the management? Because management in the schools are also told, look, you must produce good results. They put pressure on the teachers. Teachers drill students, and they spend most of the time drilling students, going over past papers just to make sure that the students pass. And when the students pass, we celebrate that they've passed. Right? Now, that is not going to dislodge. You are not going to dislodge that very easily. So what we need is to think very hard, particularly about assessment. My view is that we need to change assessment so that so as to change the curriculum and the way teachers teach. If we are going to de-emphasize the exam, particularly the summative assessment part, which is the terminal examination and so forth, and focus more on the formative aspect of assessment, then we'll be in a position to teach for skills development than is the situation at the moment. But I can also say to you that that thinking is there. You can see it in the ETSSP, which is the Education and Training Sector Strategic Plan. Is there that you're going to move away from exams to formative things. That will be a good move, because eventually it will change the way teachers look at teaching, the way students look at learning, and eventually we may have a situation where there is less emphasis on content mastery and more emphasis on skills development.
Right. And you say eventually, which makes me a little bit anxious. And if we are to see ourselves as global citizens, then we should have the same anxiety across the board. Moving away from being homogenous to being heterogeneous and multifaceted in the approach of education. So if we look at some of the most sought after careers in the future, or the ones that will be in demand, we're looking at things like artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're looking at data science. We're looking at maybe even our traditional roles like human resources. Right? Mejanong ka pace re tsamayang ka yone, a mme gone re tla goroga. Ga o tlhobaele Mensambiwa ka le hokole ola eventually le leng gore le biwa ke Professor Tabulawa.
Go a thobetsa re mothei tota ke go a thobetsa mme re ta goroga ya ka Professor bua. I think the other thing se leng gore se teng that as a parent na se san thobatseng ke gone gore I think we need to move away from, I don't know if it's the education system or is it the surrounding education, where we often at times concentrate on building employees than employers. Because I would want to imagine, or I would want to agree with you, we are global citizens and we are moving towards so many different technological aspects of the world that are happening. but we are still stuck as a country. Le ngwana ha o mmotsa gompieno ana, o mo raya hore o batla go bereka kae, ga o mo re hore o batla, what do you want, what do you aspire to be in life? And I want us to challenge ourselves even in the education system, to build entrepreneurs, to build artificial what not bone bao. Because even now you take a learner or a graduate from BUA, what are you doing? I'm unemployed. A BUA graduate who lives in Botswana, a land that has opportunities when it comes to farming, when it comes to agriculture. I want to believe that we pride ourselves a lot in that. But you look into the agricultural spectrum, a lot of non-Botswana have overtaken that. And we still have graduates from Mbuan who are market available, Baba Dirlembo horticulture, this and that. And I want to believe our government should also not only provide in the school systems or in tertiary systems, let's prepare them also to do these courses so that they can also be entrepreneurs, they can also be better citizens, they can provide more opportunities so that we can be global citizens, like you just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ke puisong ya rona e leng gore ya gotela jaanong jaaka re bua ka thuto le ka gaentseng ka teng mo lehatsheng la Botswana. Le wena ke ka eletsa gore o nne le seabe mo puisong ya rona, o ka romela molaetsa mo 76281885 kgotsa o ka romela molaetsa mo tsebeng gongwe ya Duma FM jaaka re ga sa yone puisanyo e ka tlhamallo o ka botsa ko re tla tsisa potso ya gago gone kwano re lebisa baeng ba me. Ke batla go tlhaloganya go ha gore rona re ha kae Prof Tabulawa, ke ra gore ne ke bua ka bo artificial intelligence, ne ke bua ka bo machine learning, gona kana gona le bo internet of things, bo blockchain ba ileng gore a re ise re ba ame a re tla ba ama tota mo puisanyong ya ke bone e re ka ba ama ka gore go lebega go santse go na le bothata ko tlase kwa, the lower rungs, you know, it seems like that's where we are. So in terms of the job market and what it demands, where are we? What is it that is informing our education route? Tsela e leng gore ra e tsaya e re betlelang baithuti, e re betlelang these graduates, re ba baakanyetsa eng, re lebile eng?
Thanks, Motlhophi. You know, we are basically a pre-industrial society, an agrarian society in short. And we are gearing our education up for the production of post-industrial workplace. That is always going to be a challenge. We may come up with the best programs that imbue students with all the skills related to AI, robotics, and all that. But at the end of the day, the economy should also reciprocate by availing those jobs that go hand in hand with the skills that the students would have acquired through the education system. And if the students in the process don't get those jobs, the tendency is to turn back and say the education system is to blame, when in actual fact is the economy that is also failing to generate those jobs. Look, we can have the best education system which imbues skills with all those entrepreneurial skills, right? But not all of the students are going to be entrepreneurs. Even if you look even in the US, look at the big entrepreneurs. You can count them if you look at the total population of the US. There are not that many compared to as a percentage of the total population. Yeah, there will be few of those. The majority are people who will need somehow to be employed. But the truth is that with technological advancement, the truth is that jobs are going to be lost and are being lost. And unemployment is unavoidable in this context. But we are, as tertiary education institutions, because I don't want to put too much emphasis. There's been too much emphasis on relating basic education to the world of work. What world of work? Where do you expect a standard 7, a Form 3, a Form 5 students to where do you expect them to get a job? There's no job for that. At that level, we should be concentrating on making sure that the students have the basic numeracy and literacy skills, which, like Mansambiwa says, they don't have in preparation for tertiary education. And then we massify tertiary education, right? Our TVETs, our universities, we make sure that we get as many students as possible there. And that is where we begin now to prepare them for the world of work, right? And already we are beginning to do that. We are working on programs. It's our AI, it's our robotics at university level. You don't expect that in primary schools as such, but at that level we are. But the problem of unemployment will always be there.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not only the education system is not there to produce jobs. That's a myth. The education system is there to support the economy, which means the economy has an obligation to generate jobs. But what kind of jobs? Most of the jobs that are generated by the economy are low-level jobs. By high-skill jobs, we come here with a high skill qualification. You may not get employed, but that is not because you have a poor tertiary education qualification. It's only that you don't have that. I mean, look at, just to take just a minute. Look at the kind of jobs that are said to be in short supply in this country. The majority of them are artisans jobs. Now, how do you expect the university, as a university, to respond to that? It's very difficult for a university to come up with programs on artisans. What we should be focusing on as a country, which we are not focusing on, is really TVET. Because that is where you will produce these people, where clearly there is a shortage, because we're importing all these things from surrounding, our neighbors. Yeah.
Mensambiwa, TVET, gore yone botlhokwa go le kae mo sepeleng wa thuto le ka ha rona re lebellang thuto ka teng a re tlotla tiro a diatla mma a re tlotla this technical and vocational education and training mo lehatsheng la rona di brigade go lebega re sa beeletse thata mo go tsone go na le dikgotlhatlhotlhano tse leng gore re kopana le tsone tsa baagisenyi ba rona ba tla kwano ka go lemoga gore go na le tlhoko le leng teng. There's a demand for those kind of artisan jobs or craft jobs.
I feel we don't appreciate such, but to a certain level, I think that's where we should be concentrating on and adopting, even in the tertiary aspect, because it's exactly what I was saying, to say how lebeletse di universities are they are more theoretical than practical. O bona ha ne re ka ithuta the same way bana ba ko technical college ba brigade ba ithutang ka teng, we will have ready-made employees ba ileng gore le bone ba ready go bereka. And I want to believe ga re appreciate tiro ya diata, mme re tshwanetse gore re appreciate ka gore, like Professor na bua ga se rotlhe ba re tayang ko university, but if our education was to prepare our learners at basic education to know basic numeracy and literacy, e ne ka ba godisa gore ba kgone go tshwara ha ile gore wa itirela ka diata, a kgone go bala madi a gagwe ile gore wa kgona go a tsenya ile letseno. A kere ga se rotlhe ba ile gore re taye ko university le rona ba ile gore ga ra itewa diata mo go tsa thuto, mme re iteile diata mo go itireleng. I want to believe gore mentor tshwantse gore a cultivate that and give these graduates more opportunities and appreciate that through abonelone it's worth well. I think that's why often at times ba sa tseweng ka thwahalo, mme kana ke bone batho ba ileng gore ba ka contribute towards the economy, like Professor was saying, and not only look into white collar jobs tse ileng gore ke tsa di office hela. Yes.
Prof, re setse re tsamela go bokhutlong a re tlhokana le gore re latlhele ko ntle system e leng gore re na le yone mo nakong ya gompieno, that is to say a total overhaul of the current education system. A gona le ha ileng gore re ka anapa teng gore bontsintsi jwa tse ileng gore ntse le di bua ke lo tse di botlhokwa, mme ke ntse ke utlwa go se gontsi mo ileng gore motho a ka beeletsa mo go gone kana a ka re ke mo a ka go anapang tse dintle tse ileng gore di re tlhoma ko pele gongwe tse di ka kwatabololwang ke bangwe mahatsa sele in terms of how we do things here. So se leng gore sa tlhokagala jaanong ba e leng gore ba reeditse government in waiting a simolle go ipaakanya kana itlhokotsa mo karolong nngwe ya education system ya rona a re santse re tla beeletsa mo go bosokathoa bo thorex bo mfecane wo le tshega ka le itse gore re tswa kgakala re ntse re go toutiwa tsone dintlha tse.
No, I think, like I said, the country has done very well when it comes to provision, access. Actually, it's really marvelous. If you visit some countries in the continent, you will come to realize that this country is really, really far. But in terms of quality, it's very difficult to say totahoha. At the moment, the quality is something that we is something that we can really talk positively about. What is needed? I think that's basically your question. I don't have any prescriptions. Of course, I do have my own ideas. I don't have any prescriptions. But what I would say is needed is a national dialogue on education. A national dialogue, bipartisan, right? Non-political, just to focus on education and say, what is it that we are not doing right? And I should say efforts are underway along those lines to organize a national dialogue. I'm not going to say much about it, but probably in the coming few months, you will see something coming out about a national dialogue. We may be organizing a conference where we are going to look at all aspects of education, around which we can then build a consensus as a nation as to where to take our education to. But I can't prescribe what it is, because we first of all need to understand really what the issues are, and I'm not sure if the nation really understands what the problem is. Even those who are in charge of education, I'm pretty sure that they are also as surprised as everyone else, or confused as everyone else. They don't really know what is wrong.
Right. Prof, you've written voluminously on issues of pedagogy and, as mentioned earlier, education policy. Where can they do that?
Yeah, I have. I've written 2 books. One was published in 2013. It's called Teaching and Learning in Context. It's really about pedagogy. What is teaching? Why do we teach the way we teach? What philosophical assumptions underpin the way we teach? What informs the way we act in the classrooms and so forth? The nature of teaching, methods, and all that. The latest book that I published last year is called Globalization and Education Policy Reform in Botswana. In other words, this book looks at education policy reform from the National Policy on Education in 1977 to the outcomes-based the ETSSP today, and really tries to show how what forces were at work in the formulation of these policies. These books are all available online. You just Google Tabulawa, they will come out, and then you can buy from there. But there are also numerous general articles that I've published on the education system in Botswana that are also available online.
Okay. Ke a go leboga rra go bo o tsile mo tsatsing la gompieno go buisana le rona. Me Ntsambiwa, wena ke tla go botsa gore o le motlhophi o le motsadi re lebile gore mo ngwageng wa ditlhopho o tla bo o tlhoile tsebe go utlwa gore the incoming government e bua reng ka yone kganya ya education ke eng se leng gore o ka eletsa se tlhagelela ba se tlhabeletsa mo maitlamong a bone?
Sa ntlha hela ke fila gore ma-teacher ga ba appreciate mo Botswana, and I'm calling up to the incoming government to say start with appreciating teachers. Hela ba ka bona ba appreciate ma-teacher ba go ira tiro e ntle ra go bona phetogo. when it comes to our education. And then the second thing that I foresee or I'm anticipating to see in the new government is to also look into, as the education system as it is, to have a very inclusive, standardized curriculum that is targeting every learner at their point of need. A re tlogeleng go tsaya bo Beni le bo Betty be re ba tsenya mo baseng e one be le gore ra re tsamaya le bone ba ntse jalo. Let's target every learner at their point of need. And then lastly, I think institutionalizing of remediation and enrichment programs in the school systems will take us a long way. I want to believe that as teachers have the curriculum, they have other aspects of their work, also looking mo go 30% of baseletseng ko morago a re ska re ba tlogela ruri a re boeleng ko marakanelong a ditsela. Often at times rona ha re ne re tsena ko primary ne re bala ka dikgonyana re bala ka mantswe, and learning was fun. Maletseng a la ha o tsena mo sekolong ga ka utlwa go epelwa ga kwa bona bana ba ntse ha ba tse learning doing things. Nna ne ke re a re itseng stoko re boele ko morago into things that did work for us, and make sure that education a rona e nna le quality na le yone. Like I said in the beginning, when it comes to structure, di ka tswa di tlhokagala hale le hale mme ga se mathata ke the quality of our education. So I'm calling to action to the government e leng gore ya tsena gore e tlhodimele quality ya education ya rona go pele.
Ora o tlhaletse bo mother's cooking.
Bo mother is cooking ba botlhokwa.
Ke ka ha re wetsang ka teng puisong ya rona ya letsatsi e leng gore ne itebagantse le boleng jwa thuto mo lehatsheng la Botswana, le gore go ka baakangwa bo hakae jwa thuto gore e be re ka nna setšhaba e leng gore e ipela ka thuto ya rona, re kgona go ntshetsa kwa ntle dikitso tsa rona, re kgona go bona batho ba meletsa mathe ka ha re dirang dilo ka teng. Mme ke tsela gore ke kganye le gore re tla nna re ntse re tsweledisa ka gore ga ya hella ya ka no utla prof na supa gore gongwe ebile go tla nna le tiro nngwe e leng gore e tla re mo nakong e seng kgakala ba re laletse go tla go nna teng ko go yone. Mme ka go rialo ke go tlogela gone ha ke na Tumisang Mothei, re tla kopana gape mo nakong e tlang mo thulaganyong yone ya Motlhophi BUA Voter Speak e leng gore e kopana re kopana mmogo ka la boraro e rotloediwa ke ba Congo ba ikopantse le ba Duma FM ga mmogo le the Embassy of the United States of America in Gaborone. Thank you so much.